Gonzalez is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I'd like to thank Secretary Yellen and Chair Powell for being here with us on such an important occasion at this critical moment, and talk about a couple of questions of issues that we have that have affected our district. My first question is to Secretary Yellen. Secretary, when you testified before this committee in July, you identified caregiving needs as one of the major barriers people face in getting back to work following the COVID pandemic. Studies over 80% of South Texans residing in my congressional district identify as Latino, but only 19.5% of 3 and 4-year-olds are enrolled in publicly funded preschool. What impact do you think Build Back Better Act will have in supporting our economic recovery and getting folks back to work? I know we're talking about this labor shortage, but specifically, do you believe investing in childcare and universal pre-K will bolster our economic and labor market recovery?
Yes, I absolutely do. As I mentioned previously, one of the reasons that even before the pandemic, women's labor force participation in the United States fell short of that in many developed countries is the lack of public support for childcare and paid family leave. And during the pandemic, this became so much worse because of the issues in childcare and schools not being open, but many childcare facilities closed, and people who work in childcare that involves face-to-face contact, health concerns have held people back from going to work there. So Build Back Better will subsidize childcare so that it's affordable for almost all American families, and provide 2 years of universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. And research that Treasury recently summarized in a working paper shows that this will boost labor supply, particularly that of women. And more recently, the Congressional Budget Office also published a paper that opines that this is likely to have positive impacts on employment.
Thank you. And as you know, in the CARES Act we established the Paycheck Protection Program, which has been administered by the SBA in concert with Treasury to provide economic relief and emergency payroll support to small businesses hit most by the pandemic. The program provided a lifeline for many small businesses in my district and across the country. But however, we reached a struggle to reach businesses in communities of color. And as I mentioned earlier, over 80% of my district is Latino, and over 19,000 businesses applied for PPP. Only 23.25% identified as Latino. How can we look at this information and learn how to better reach minority-owned businesses to ensure they have the same access to these resources? And what are we doing to make this happen?
Yes. Well, I mean, in the more recent payroll protection program, priority was given to CDFIs and MDIs to have access to those funds in order to provide better support to minority areas. And going forward, Congress has provided considerable resources to CDFIs and to MDIs. And what we've found is that these institutions have great ability to reach businesses in underserved areas. So the CDFI program that we run in Treasury is very focused on making sure that that support gets out, and we expect these institutions to play a significant role in the state small business credit initiative that we recently issued guidelines for.
Thank you. And lastly, I just want to ask a question on the Emergency Capital Investment Program that was established and consolidated on the Appropriations Act of 2021 to encourage low and moderate income community financial institutions to bolster their efforts to support and engage with small businesses in their communities. I understand the deadline to submit an application
The
for
gentleman's
the
time
program
has
was
expired.
okay.